Hello, everybody. We've got the waiting room emptying out, so we'll just give it a couple of minutes for folks that want to join this this roundtable. My end is showing 22 participants, so that's awesome, and thank you. And again, Cam, thank you for breaking out time in what I know was a busy season, as you explained last week, and Tom and Leah. You know, this is remarkable that we're pulling this all together so virtually and remotely, and likewise to the attendees. Hope you're having a good start to this this summit, and we'll just give it another 60 seconds and we'll drive right in. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping. Some sessions are having kind of a just a completely open forum with respect to the numbers of folks that are coming in, and others are just doing this more dynamically. With this group now 25, we're just going to open it up, and we've got a lot of depth in this panel, and some really great example use case with Cam. So feel free to just unmute yourself and ask questions just point blank. You can still certainly send questions through the Q&A if that's showing on your screen, and or the chat. Different icons are going to show based on your own setup. But who would like to start this off? Corey, okay, so just unmute yourself and we can get going.
Hi, my question is for everybody on the panel, but maybe Cam, you might have some deeper insight to that. We have some interest in the Oceanside area to solve the challenge of fulfillment, and I believe that there's going to be a need, if there isn't already, for the ability to help with fulfillment, maybe not to businesses that are doing the volume that you are, but for small business. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing with fulfillment that was really important for us is we knew that our product still had to pass through a federally registered facility in order to be deemed food safe through Canadian Food Inspection Agency. We'd have to have everything labeled properly, including like legal names and any ingredients that were added. So that first step for us, it was a change in how we were going to label things. But luckily for us, we already had a federally registered facility. I do know that the NDP put up a processing facility in Victoria, and there's a lot of talk about wanting to do another one in Nanaimo, or maybe even further north like Comox or Campbell River, and from that doing a lot of distribution out of it. So that might be another option too. For us, for our fulfillment, what we do is, because our site is on Shopify, we go through, we take everything that needs to be fulfilled for the noon cutoff of that day, take it out on the floor of the plant for a 2-hour shift. We usually have 2 or 3 people on the crew work together, pack everything out for boxes, make sure everything's properly labeled, and they get that last check on quality too before it goes out for anyone. So that was kind of how we did it. It hasn't taken more than that unless we have something crazy like we put spot prawn tails on sale and suddenly you have 300 orders in a day instead of 100. So that was kind of what we did. Did that help to answer anything for you? I don't know if it did.
Yeah, I think further to that question, you said that to use a fulfillment center and it was about 65% of your costs or of your income.
That's right. So specifically, and I'll say it on here now, we had looked at taking retail programs and we were going to look at Cisco going to Loblaws in the east for us. And that was 65%. So if we gave the product to Cisco, they were going to do all the fulfillment, all the warehousing for us, all the distribution for us. It would go into a Loblaws store and they would sell for retail there. They required a 65% margin. So if it was retailing for $10, that meant they needed $6.50 of that $10 right off the top. So if our cost of production was going to be $3.50 or less, we got to make some margin. If we didn't, we were in big trouble. So, and for us, when we looked at doing door-to-door ourselves, it was dramatically less than that, and you were able to go straight to the consumer. So that was the big thing that we realized, and we didn't even know that until we started putting the whole thing together. That we went, wow, holy crow, we're really onto something here.
So Cam, thanks for that. Let me just add, Corey, there's a couple of rules of thumb with respect to, the art and science of logistics. One that, both that you've actually hit, Cam, volume and margin. So those things really drive the bus for sake of determining, a viable business model in a logistical, entity. The region, I think, has got a lot of great ideas and a lot of things to get sorted out over the next several months here, but keep those things in mind. Okay, so anything, who's next? Open floor.
I'll ask Cam a question that we kind of talked about. We touched on at the end of the QA and a little bit offline afterwards, which was the shift between having like 12 clients to 3,000 clients and managing those relationships and how that affects your business. And I would guess at a certain point you have salespeople that have really strong relationships with your big clients, right? But then when you get to, if you have 5 salespeople or whatever it is, suddenly they're managing 3,000 much smaller clients. How has that been an adaptation for you guys?
That's been a huge adaptation for us. It's really interesting because when you're dealing with a big volume, usually there will be a couple emails back and forth. If it's someone who you've done business with for a long time, they'll ask questions about send me pictures, send me the catch dates, send me any of the QC specifics of something. But when you're dealing with a ton of small consumers who just want to buy enough for Sunday night dinner, it's really, really different. And it's great because you learn an absolute ton. But for people, especially on Vancouver Island, and I think it probably, speaks to North America at large, people want to know what is special about this. They want to know what is special about the thing that I'm buying. I don't care, how many grams it weighs or when it was caught. I want you to tell me what's special about this albacore tuna that I have right now. How did you personally prepare it when you had it in your house? It was a lot more intimate, of course, and it was a lot less scientific. It was kind of a more emotional conversation, and it's great, but it definitely draws on a totally different skill set for sure for that kind of communication. But yeah,
Here is your tuna. Its name is Frederick.
Totally.
It was born in 1923, and yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the adaptations we did is we started saying, okay, great. So anybody on Facebook or on Instagram who puts in hashtag tied to my table, put in your favorite recipe that you did with seafood this week. And at the end of the week, we're going to draw 3 names that we thought had the best recipes, and we're going to comp them whatever seafood it was that they were able to show. And we found that from doing things like that, where people feel more involved in the community, and at the same time, they're sharing and educating different ways to do things, that worked out really, really well for us.
Awesome. So let me just build on that, Cam. I think a lot of folks on this call would know this term, but I'll just keep it really simple. It's the concept of what's called the long tail, and Amazon figured that out really early, and it basically is this: a given bookstore, which is where they started too, can only inventory so many books, and they're generally going to inventory the more popular books that are going to give some turn. But all of those extra special books that only might sell onesie twosies a year have typically never been in that inventory. And so when you can digitize and then warehouse and expand on this stuff, and start to sell to customers that you may have never met, to sell boutique items that normally just did nothing for you, that's a whole bunch of new business. And quite frankly, it was the catalyst to the early days of Amazon. And so Cam, I also remember in a chat here, you're saying, hey, you know what, there were products that you thought were going to sell really great and they did or didn't. There are other things that you didn't think would sell great and they did better than you thought. In essence, that's a big concept. That is the long tail, and that is what the digital domain can provide. So you may have these abstract things that you can do or sell, but when you start marketing online, you get a whole bunch of new relationships happening there. So let me shift into a question we just got through chat here, and I'm going to put this to Cam and Leah and Tom. What are the best social media tools? For in a general sense, but you guys can answer that because I think I know what you might say. Leah, how about you? You start off with some social media tool sets.
Sure. I think it really depends on your demographic. So if I'm speaking to somebody on Instagram, I'm speaking a certain language. But if I'm speaking on Instagram stories, let's say, or if I'm advertising through Instagram stories, if I don't understand the language of Instagram stories, my advertisement's not going to work. But you also need to know who is on Instagram stories. Is this an appropriate place for me to be selling product? Is Facebook an appropriate place? Is, an ad that follows you around, programmatic ads, is that appropriate? You have to understand your audience and you have to know where they are. And then you have to be giving them things that they want. So that's it in a nutshell. I know Cam will have some concrete examples from that, but yeah, know your audience and know where they're hanging out.
Yeah, I think my concrete example would be when Leah and I sat down for lunch months and months ago, and I was like, well, what should we do? Should we use Facebook, or should we use Instagram, or should we use Twitter, or should we use YouTube? And Leah was like, well, you're using all of them. You're going to have to use all of them, but you're going to have to design different ways that you're going to communicate throughout each one. If I look at which one actually generates the most business for us, or on our Shopify site, like we get the most hits from that, Facebook is the biggest driver. But I would argue that it is having our own YouTube channel where you can have 2 or 3 minute videos that tell a longer story that helps keep people committed to the brand. And at the same time, having really short, punchy videos that are only like 10 or 15 seconds on Instagram that helps to support the brand too. So it's really having all those things together where you're getting the most bang for your buck. But if I had to go with only one, I'd go with Facebook.
Just to add to that, it's really interesting because the demographic for Facebook is now trending older. And so Cam, you probably aren't advertising on TikTok, and why should you? 12-year-olds aren't going to be necessarily buying your product. The people who have money to buy your product are watching their kids' videos on Facebook or watching their grandkids. And so that demographic has shifted. So I can see why that's resonating with your audience.
Perfect. So Tom, I think you'd probably answer in a similar fashion. So let me just shift to another question that was just typed in here. I don't know the answer to this one, but we're going to just put it out there. What are best practices for charging and remitting PST for inter-provincial customers and obviously selling online? I don't know the answer to that. We can find that out for you, but if anyone knows the answer to that, please share.
I also don't know the answer to that. Boy, we employ some really great accountants who I'm sure would. I can tell you that when we did everything through Shopify, it keeps everything for tax completely separate. So you can see exactly where your money comes in and see exactly how much is allocated to that. Because it's food, I think we had a lot of exemptions for that.
Yeah,
so,
I do know, as you've referred to, some platform solutions and payment fulfillment applications have this embedded with the establishment of your account and the trade that you're doing. But that's a good question to carry forward. I will write this down.
I just have a little thing to add is as you're becoming more digital, you're buying software, and this software is cloud-based. So if you're buying cloud-based software, you have to sometimes be remitting PST on that cloud. So what we're doing as a company is we're self-assessing our software purchases because we are responsible for paying for some of our cloud-based software services to PST. So we self-assess because they're not charging PST. Because in the olden days, we would grab a CD and at Staples, they would charge us PST. So that's something to keep in mind as you're moving digital, that the software you use for the operations of your company, talk to your bookkeeper, accountant about PST.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, do the homework with your accountant to figure out what the most right way to do it is, with the knowledge that you might be wrong. It's possible, and configure your software early so that you don't realize that after 3/4 of a year you haven't been collecting and assessing and whatnot correctly, and suddenly you have a big headache. I don't think any of us here are accountants, so I don't think we should be answering that question, other than talk to an accountant and make sure that you're configuring your store software really smartly, and get help with that if you don't know how to do it yourself.
Yeah, I should scan the participant list here. Maybe that's not a true statement with no accountants, but anyways, that's something that needs a deeper dive. So another question, just Cam, this is a general. You don't have to totally answer this, if you don't want to, but give us a range of your ad budget for these last several months, and clearly you've had some success, but has this cost you a fortune?
Yeah, so I saw the question, and the way they'd actually phrased it is, how much more are we spending than what we used to spend? And well, a lot more than what we used to spend, because we spent pretty much zero. We would occasionally do some videos, but they were often designed more for a specific product like spot prawns, and we would film it in a way that we knew would be popular to attract Chinese, where they would want to see lots of like scenic backdrops. Whereas now, and I can tell you what we're spending right now is a function of our sales. 6% of our sales revenue from Tide to Table goes towards advertising, whether that's paid advertising on something like Facebook, or whether that is actually working with someone like VIEA and her company to go out and do an on-site video shoot. So I do think that there's a good chance that that percentage will decrease over time, because we're going to have these larger libraries of great pictures and videos and everything else that we're able to recycle through it.
So I think a lot of folks would know this last century saying, which is half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The problem is I don't know which half. So that's changed a lot. Like, that's changed immensely. Your ability to target and measure and obviously run analytics. The effectiveness, capital efficiency of advertising has gone through the roof. And so we can now almost make it a programmatic exercise vis-a-vis its X% of sales. And guess what? I can see and realize a return on that in ways that just were never imaginable. So it is, as Leah mentioned in the session, it is a component. It's one of the many things that you do that will then yield very positive results. Tom, I saw you're wanting to add on that.
I was actually just going to follow up with Cam. Did you factor that 6% in when you were talking about your increased margin, or is that coming out of your increased margin?
That would come out of our increased margin. So when we had the increased margin versus if we had gone straight to retail, there was a couple of things that we did with it. One, we made sure that anybody who bought from us was paying retail value or less for any of our products. We wanted to always be at the bottom. We made sure that for our fishermen, for anything that was going through this, we paid them a little bit extra. So they knew it was going on Tide to Table. And that way we could say, look, we might come out and record you on your boat sometime in the next month doing this for us. Are you okay with that? Here's some of the returns in your own pocket from the program. And then we also made sure that we had some extra revenue left for advertising too. to try and punch that through. So the thing that was really good about it is it meant for any of our fishermen who were able to participate in it, they were really proud of the fact that, so it helped in that sense.
Awesome, thanks.
Cool. Okay, so another question. I'm assuming everybody can see most of the questions here when they're sent to everybody, but consumer trends, research that's in behind some of the changes that have happened over the past several months, and what might be coming, and what are we seeing. So I'll just be brief on this. I think we can identify specific sectors like grocery market stuff, where an increasing percentage of people are ordering online and picking up at the store. That ripples through various retailers. I think a lot of people are realizing that it actually saves them time in their day, and why wouldn't I do that? So I think that's going to stick. It presented, it's being used, and it'll stick, I think, for quite some time. Then we obviously have seasonality of tourism operators, and different limits and restrictions. Just this morning, I got a email from Mount Washington, explaining how the season's going to pan out. So every little industry, is going to make these adjustments, and we're participants. So have some voice, understand what's happening. We got a few more months yet of figuring this stuff out. So Tom, Leah, Cam, any other thoughts on that?
Mine will segue to Cam, is that it's really interesting to watch the analytics coming through Google. They have a lot of reports about what's going on during COVID, and the thing that they were the most excited about, that they found the most interesting, was that the trends were global. So the trend to how to cook certain things was not a regional, that was global, around the world trend. And I'll use that as a segue to ask Cam about how he capitalized on this trend, which is a new one, of what can I cook at home? How can I cook it at home?
Yeah, so that was a big thing that we saw really early on as we launched, and we're like, this is great. We're selling albacore loins, and we'd have somebody who would buy like $200 of albacore loins, and they'd be delivered to their house, and they're like, this is awesome. It looks like phenomenal quality. What do I do with it? After spending like $200 on it. And we're like, holy crow, okay, great. Well, let's go to that next level. Let's all put our heads together on our team and start trying to launch pictures. And then we went from that, and we launched the contest where people could put in their own recipes. Whoever's recipes were the best throughout the week, we'd say, okay, these 3 people, we're going to comp you your seafood for your recipe that you have. So there's definitely a lot of that. And I think people really like the sense of community that comes with that too. It's kind of a source of pride for everyone, where they're like, wow, that looks like, that's phenomenal that you did your prawn linguine that way. I'm going to try that one for sure, and I'm going to buy some right now. So it worked out really well for us that way, but it was a strong component of educating your consumers at the same time as you're launching products. So that was very important for us.
Fantastic. Any other questions from the group here, live or text?
I wouldn't mind expanding on the customer journey just a touch.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Because Cam just talked about educating the consumer. And one of the first things that we want to do is attract the customer and then engage the customer. And we do that often through education. And that's a real human thing, because I love that Cam had that focus on, this is one of our fishermen. This is how he caught the fish. This is his boat. And people having that connection to local product is huge. And even if someone was buying that in Toronto, they would love that story about this fisherman and where their product's coming from. And that's a very human story. And I know I talked about that in the session, but that customer journey, there's a different kind of voice. You can do the hard sell because you're tracking them. You know that they've gone to your website, they've engaged with your educational material. Well, now I know that I can send them a 10% off coupon and do a hard sell. So there's different types of communication at different points in the customer journey. And that's something that is a little more refined, and you can do as you're a more mature digital company, but it's something to think about too. It's something to think about as someone is coming into your store. What is the process of selling, and then how can I replicate that online?
Super good point. In some of the workshop stuff that we do, you know, I identify 3 basic things that I think is a bit of a magic formula, and it's increased serendipity. So do things to help you get more lucky, and build relationships, and then communicate. You know, and you can work that obviously from the ground up. So if you get good at communicating, you will, as a natural byproduct, have better, stronger relationships. And guess what? You'll get more lucky with respect to your goals and objectives. So those things work very symbiotically. And when it comes to, you know, the digital domain, for folks that haven't spent much time there, it does seem distant and remote and less human, less personal, but it's actually the opposite. In many respects, it's even more. A lot of businesses, and, you know, I have some retail in my history as well. You know, you open up, people come in, they pick up things, they give you money, and they go home, right? And you might chat, and that's all wonderful, but when things change, you actually need to know and build those relationships, and if you do that, then you've got something to lever forward. So just one more question here. It's just, I'm just reading here quickly. Sorry. Was there a question that somebody had? I've just got a little bit of a mixed message there, but. Okay, so Tom, quick wrap up thoughts from you. We'll just do a quick inventory here.
Yeah, sure. There were a couple of things that I picked up on that we didn't really get to loop back on during the discussion that I just wanted to touch on again. One of the questions that came in the Q&A was, is there a magic formula, or what's the best practice, right? We talked about this a little bit offline between the session and roundtable here. And the short answer is there is no magic formula. And Leah touched on this. It's not magic. It's not like you do this, and this, and automatically everything magically happens. But there are some best practices that are really important, that are good things to follow. The first one is test before you make. You know, Cam talked a little bit, I don't remember whether it was in the session or offline, about doing a survey and saying, hey, you know, here are some things that we're thinking about. How much interest is there in this, before actually, you know, diving into custom pet food or whatever it was. We have unprecedented levels of communication with our customers now, so lean into that, leverage, find out about your market, and find out what your customers actually want before you dive into making stuff. And the second part of best practices is really just customer service. It's really going that extra mile. It is, you know, when you mess up, own your mess up and follow through, you know, 1000%. If something slips through the cracks, you know, find out about that before the customer complains, and reach out and say, hey, we really order, we're sending you the order plus, you know, a coupon for whatever, because, you know, the customer has the opportunity to go anywhere. Really leverage those connections and go above and beyond with customer service.
Awesome, thank you, Leah. In brief. Oh, Mike.
Muted.
Okay, now I'm not muted. I'm going to be at this conference. I'll be gone for a little bit on Wednesday, but I'm basically here for the 3 days. So there's an attendee list at the side, and I'm in that attendee list. Feel free to reach out and ask me any questions. I mean, if I was at the summit, I love it when people come and ask me marketing questions. It's what I'm there for. It's what we do, and I love it. So just feel free to reach out to me directly, and we can chat. We can do a Zoom meeting or whatever, and hopefully I can help. And you can bring me very specific questions about your business. So that'll be my takeaway.
Yeah, likewise. I think, you know, we're all available and accessible, you know, afterwards. And so Cam, I'm going to give closing thoughts to you, because you've been a great feature for this session.
Thanks, Graham. I think my closing thoughts are, it was really important to us to listen to someone who had experience in this realm, because we had none going down this road at all. And once we were on that path, we really had to keep our eyes and our ears open for things like, you know, we joked about this in between the last two sessions, but somebody making a derogatory comment on a paid ad that you have on Facebook. How do you want to deal with that, right? That'll define the path of what happens next. Very, very much, right? And so you need to learn from all of those experiences. Same thing when we did the survey a month in. It was right when we were about to switch and try and produce really high quality pet food. And I thought that was going to be a smoking idea. And we did the survey and everyone was like, no, we want fresh seafood, not pet food. And so we went down that path instead. And thank goodness we did, right? But ask your customers, talk to people who are involved in that realm already and have the experience, take their advice, listen to why that advice is pertinent. You know, what mistakes do you want to avoid being forced to make on your own? Learn from somebody else's. So that would be my final thoughts.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, panelists, and for, you know, really a great crew of folks that have logged into this session. You know, I think we had well over 40 people. I wish everybody a great summit and rest of your day, and we'll break from here.